Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts Podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. With your hosts, Drew and Daniela. Take our hands and let's walk this journey together. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Meaningful Hearts Podcast with Drew and Daniela. And today we're going to talk about whether our thoughts are healthy or not. So maybe you brush your back a little bit and think, wow, I was like, I never thought of that. Well, yeah, that's that time to sit back and think, what goes through my mind on a daily basis? I know that something I think about quite often, more so in this period of my life than I have ever before, because we are the gatekeepers of the things that we put in our mind and a lot of things that occur in our lives, and a lot of it has to do with our thoughts. Is that true, Daniela?
Mm-hmm.
As she gulps
some
water.
Drinking water, and I also apologize in advance because I'm a little congested. So I might be sniffling a lot.
That's not true. She's talking deeper now. She decided to change her voice.
Yeah, I actually like the voice change when I'm sick. That's one of the only things that I like.
I am so cool.
Yeah, I'm super cool. Cool with a K-E-W-L. Cool.
Well, just a little background, right? Thoughts are really self-made, right? Things that we process, things that we talk about in our heads, they're all self-made. We're always in control, but sometimes it feels that we can't help ourselves to think a certain way, or it's like our mind takes over. And this is something that I know for me in my life has been quite a struggle, because there are things that I don't want to think about or give me anxiety or give me fear. And I want to just kind of minimize them, or what's that word where you make them smaller? Minimize them, because they don't serve me. But at the same time, it's like, as I try to, it just, that elephant gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's massive. So just a side note, something I struggle with. So this is a great subject for me, and I know Daniela would like to talk about. So without further ado, we'd have to talk about some identification, right? What types of thoughts that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before we get into that, though, I will also say that while it is true that we are more in control of our thoughts than we realize, I think the both of us and anybody can relate and understand that thoughts do tend to get the better of us, because one thought will lead to the next thought, and then the next thought, the next thought. And I know so many of us have experienced what we think nobody else has thought about, and it makes us feel like there's something wrong with us. It's not until we have conversations and we're like, wow, you have that thought too? I know Drew and I have certainly had conversations like that, where each of us have had our own thoughts, and then we are like, we ask each other. I know I've asked you. Yeah. Do you have that thought?
I'm so glad that she's asking me, because I'm at the wheel right now. So I'm like,
yeah.
Do I have those thoughts, or I just like, no, I don't. No, okay. But yeah, I'm grateful when I do hear somebody has some really out there wacky thought or idea, something that they've like, I guess, put themselves in prison for, I guess, in a sense, and made themselves feel bad. Yeah. But when somebody else, it's almost like somebody lets you out and says, okay, I'm normal again. I'm not so wacky, because some of the thoughts that we have, I'd say that our brains are, we weigh out everything. We see something, we interpret it, and we think about it, and we can't help it. You can't unthink something if once it's there, it's like, that's life. We observe things, we weigh out options, we see if things are safe or not, or whether they're worth doing. We have only way to do it is to put it into our machine and kind of like go through the process. And sometimes these thoughts are crazy. It's like
they feel crazy.
I don't know if it's too much go on a tangent and just say one. Like, for example,
I wonder if we're thinking the same thing or similar.
Somebody's like a murderer or a killer, right? And you see you hear about some somebody doing some crazy killing or whatever, and then you think to yourself, would I do that? And you think about yourself as that role. Not to say that you're a psycho killer, but it's just you run it through the lens microscope of your own conscious, and you're like, yeah, that's horrible. I guess that's how we can kind of understand whether something's bad or not, by putting it through our own lens.
Yeah. And I think in a similar realm, I know I used to feel pretty crazy for having thoughts like this, but there would be times where, like, I would take the train and I'd be waiting for the train on the platform, and I would think, like, I'd wonder what it'd be like to get hit by this train, or to jump in front of it. And I used to think, like, wow, like, that's not a good thought. And it wasn't until I had conversations with other people, it's actually pretty common to imagine ways to die.
Yeah.
I know you and I have had conversations like that, where I know when we were on our trip, we had a conversation about, like, hey, what would it be like to fall, like, off this? Like, how I think we would die before even hitting the ground.
I also think that when something tragic happens in front of us, I mean, for the most part, there's always people around. Like, if somebody gets killed, it doesn't matter how bad somebody gets hit by a train. There are people standing there watching and trying to get a glimpse. They're trying to get a glimpse of what's going on, and they hope to get a glimpse of something. It's pure curiosity, I think.
It is.
So to think of these thoughts and not actually, not follow through, I guess in a sense is very normal. Death death is always hanging in the balance somewhere, like, try not to die, try to keep yourself safe. So it's always there.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So if any of you have ever had thoughts like that, your reality check, you are normal.
Yeah.
Now, within the realm of thoughts, now to get back to the main point of our episode, is that while we can recognize that we have thoughts that make us feel crazy sometimes that are actually normal, there are thoughts that, depending on the weight that we give these thoughts, can either make us or break us in a lot of ways. In therapy, I've worked with clients to identify types of negative thinking. In therapy, we call them cognitive distortions. If you have a pen or some type of note-taking tool in front of you right now, this may be a good moment to take that out, because Drew and I are about to share with you examples of negative thinking and really how to work on ways to reframe and challenge those thoughts that really ultimately weigh us down. So we call them cognitive distortions in therapy. I'm going to give seven types, which is the main ones. I'm sure that there's more, but these are the main ones that most of us fall victim to. The first one is something called polarized thinking. And essentially what this means is a student who gets an A- on an exam feels like a failure because they are used to getting A+ grades only. They have the mentality of, if I'm not successful at everything I do, I'm a complete failure. It's very polarized. The second one is something we call mental filtering. Now, there's two types of mental filtering. There's negative mental filtering, and then there's disqualifying the positive. Disqualifying the positive is a little similar to polarized. It's getting a good grade, but still thinking about what they could have done better, or that they got a good grade simply by luck or a fluke instead of the hard work that they put in. That's disqualifying the positive. That's the same as, I got a 95, but why didn't I get a 99? You're discounting the fact that a 95 is still a really good grade. Negative mental filtering is when, an example is an employee receiving a good performance review, but focusing on the one negative comment that their manager made about them. We have all fallen victim to this at some point. Part of that is because we weren't properly taught how to handle constructive criticism. We are our own worst critic, and we take that one small thing and amplify it to be a really big thing. The third one is something we call overgeneralization. So kind of sticking in the realm of bad grades. An example is a student receives a bad grade on one exam. Based on this, they think they are stupid and a failure, and believe that all future exams will also result in the same grade. Then there's jumping to conclusions, which is a little similar to overgeneralization, is taking one thing and assuming that it's going to apply to the rest of everything. And within that is fortune telling. So a different example is having a bad date and then predicting that all the dates that you're going to go on are going to go bad. Now you're making assumptions before all the future dates have even occurred. Mind reading, this is something that has actually happened to me in my work with my patients. And I've been able to challenge my patients when it happens, as long as we have good rapport. They'll be telling me something and then they'll make an assumption about what I'm thinking. And what we call that is mind reading. It's pretty much jumping to a conclusion that you don't actually know is true or not. You're just jumping to that conclusion based on what you're thinking and what you're feeling. This next one is also something that I think all of us, really fall victim to, is catastrophizing. We either magnify a situation or, like Drew says, we minimize a situation. So magnification is, say, for example, a person's lunch date is running late and then that person assumes the worst. Their worries escalate quickly and the thoughts become exaggerated. Like they'll go to am I being stood up, to like, did that person die and that's why they're not here? Very extreme. That's a very big magnification. As far as the minimization is winning an award but not acknowledge that you've gotten the accomplishment. A lot of these cognitive distortions can go hand in hand. They're synonymous in a lot of ways, but they're still different in their own unique way as well, if that made sense. I have two more. The next one is personalization. And this is when, let's say, for example, you're attending a party with all of your friends, but all of your friends are busy engaging with other people. You feel like they don't have any interest in being your friend and engaging in conversation with you. This then makes you think that you don't belong or you're unfairly excluded. This has definitely happened to me, where I walk into a room and people will be engaging with each other, and I will ask myself, why aren't people engaging with me? Is there something wrong with me? When in reality, they're engaging in conversation. They're not meeting to exclude me. And I think, again, these cognitive distortions, they happen to all of us. The last one is blaming. A way to describe this is placing blame for relationship issues on your partner instead of sharing the responsibility for actions taken by both of you. You assume the victim mentality and think everything they do is to hurt you. This is something that is, in relationships, very dangerous. And I know that Drew and I make a constant conscious effort when we have disagreements to make sure that we both understand it's not him versus me. It's him and me versus the problem. Now, we have fallen victim to times where Drew likes to be right, I like to be right. So we clash in that sense. But as a foundation, this is something that we have kept in mind. Now, I will also say, I knew I threw a lot out there very quickly, but one of the wonderful things about having this recorded is that you can go back and re-listen, and you can also do research of your own. The main point is starting to think about what your thoughts look like. What categories can your thoughts, based on the examples that I've given just now, what categories do they fall into? And what can you relate to? Do you overgeneralize some things? Do you future tell? I know so many of us with anxiety that worry about the future, even though realistically speaking, we don't know what the future holds, we still predict that things are going to go wrong. I know Drew can also relate to that as well.
Yes. I look at this list and I'm like, wow, it's like my guidebook to things. I'm like, damn, yeah. I catastrophize a bunch. I mean, I've been guilty of blaming, right? Yeah. I've been guilty of it in a lot of different ways, just based on how people perceive you or people communicate with you, or that maybe they don't like you. I was actually thinking of this today. Somebody that I worked with, and I remember him saying to me, we were like cool at work, but it was weird. Like we had this like weird game of like joke with each other, but sometimes it was mean spirited a little bit, but we were kind of cool. It was a weird relationship at that job, but in any case, I remember him saying like, yeah, well, if we end up, if you end up like seeing me on Facebook, or whatever, like, do I have to like friend request you? Like, do we have to like be, and I'm like, no, like, I was like, you don't really like me. Like that's cool. Like it was weird, but it was like, I don't know. But in any case, I was like, maybe I was just thinking maybe I could have asked him, hey, if you don't like me, that's cool. But what is it about me that you don't like? And I had this conversation in my head about it. So it's interesting that came up, I guess. That makes sense.
Kind of, which one would this relate to? The one that you're talking about?
I would say blaming in a sense, or even personalization. Because even at work, sometimes I was like, oh, nobody's speaking with me. Maybe I've excluded myself by being a certain way. It's like, oh, here comes this guy, like,
I see.
Maybe just creating this persona that maybe they thought was like not a genuine person, or maybe a little bit of a jerk. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think it's awesome that you're willing to be vulnerable. And that actually leads me to the point of, as I've been going through this, sometimes when I've talked about this in my work with my patients, people can get pretty overwhelmed, and then they start to be even harder on themselves to realize, oh my God, I have all of these 7. I know I've certainly had at least one of these at some point in my life at different points. I've had, all of them at different points in my life. So I want to share that it might be overwhelming at first, but it's also a relief to know that it's not like there's something wrong with you. Because once we can identify, oh, that thought, that's a cognitive distortion. That's not me per se. That's something that I'm experiencing. It's not necessarily defining who I am. And it actually is relieving, because then we're no longer at a point where we're like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I having this thought? It's understanding, oh, it's that type of thought. So I hope that for our listeners out there, you understand that we share these things to help you grow and to challenge you, but we're also human. And our point is to help you build a more meaningful life, while also acknowledging that, hey, this is something that we do. We're human beings too. And with that said, I am going to let Drew take over and share ways on how to work on these things.
Oh,
was that good? I think that was pretty good.
It was good. And it rhymed. So call it focusing on better thinking, right? That's what we came down to this list. We tried to change up a little bit and use different wording, because everybody says positive and negative, as you could see in that chart, which we didn't create. The cognitive distortions is something that it's actually out on the internet. It's very generalized. It's something that's used in her line of work and in other places. Yes. So focusing on better thinking, I think for step one would probably be identifying areas of change, places that maybe things that we want to do to fix the issues that we're having, right? If we want to become more optimistic, or if we want to be more better thinking
or to have better thinking,
we have to identify the areas of life that we usually think not so great in, and learn how to like, I guess, fix that. I mean, if I want to be better in my relationship as far as communication, and I notice that communication is not well, then there's an area I want to focus on. Now, keep this in mind. I'm sure you want to put out all fires at once. Right? You have one bucket of water, like we always say, so you can focus on one fire at a time as you move through.
I like that.
It's very important.
Yes.
Don't drive yourself nuts, because you're going to go right back to compounding all your thoughts and feeling like a failure and feeling like, damn, I have all these issues and there's something wrong with me. But remember, these are distortions, right? I would say another one, which we need to work on, is checking ourselves, right? Throughout the day. Check in with yourself, evaluate what's going on in the day. Maybe you're having a good day, maybe you're having a really bad day. But I think the key is to really check in and evaluate what we're thinking about, be aware of it. I think that's something that's very, very, very important, because sometimes we don't realize, like, for example, sometimes I replay and I go back to days that I've had, and it's like, wow, somebody said hello to me today, and how are you feeling today? How's everything? And I was feeling negative, so I gave a really shitty response, like, it's all right, I'm okay. And I think like how many answers I've had throughout the day that I've had that were impacted by my the way I was feeling, my thought process. And people are like, wow, this guy's really negative, or he's really up and down.
Right.
But being aware of it, now you go in not feeling so great, but when you walk in the door, you try to make your response a little more positive. Oh, a little more, much better. Oh, it's in me. It's in me. A better response. You know, really think about it, because you're putting that out there, and that could actually affect somebody else's mood, and you don't want to be that person. Now, moving on to another one. This one is one that I think has been a godsend for me my whole life.
This is actually one of my favorite ones. Being
open to humor. Laughter. Give yourself permission to laugh and smile. It doesn't matter when, doesn't matter how, doesn't matter the time or day, doesn't really matter at all. But laughter always works. Joy and laughter, humor, it really can get you through the hardest times. Tension, it breaks tension, especially when you're stressed. Sometimes when people are like, man, this whole project we're gonna fail tomorrow, and then we just start laughing. I'm like, yeah, should we just start packing up our stuff right now?
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'll get this stuff. We'll do. We'll leave early. We'll go have dinner together and celebrate our failure. Just make a joke out of it, because sometimes it's like there is things that are gonna happen that are not in your control. But at least making a good joke about it, or laughter at the right appropriate time, is always something that will help you trying to, like, I guess, minimize what's going on and really say, is this really as crazy as we're making it? And I think we just need to take a break, take a moment, recollect ourselves, and go back at it. I think that's key. Now, for all of us out there that say we don't have time, or our lives are too busy, there's never enough time in the world. Following a healthy lifestyle of some sort, right? Your health is very, very, very important. And it is like the key component to literally your whole life. It's everything. Your mind and your body will respond better to a lot of things in your life if you have the proper fuel and you're actually putting your body through exercise. Now, we're not saying run a marathon if you can't, if you're just getting started, but aim to exercise at least 30 to 40 minutes a day. I'm sure you can find a program of some sort that can get you there. Take baby steps, but a step in the right direction, even if it's 1% to 2% per year. If it compounds over time, you become a completely different person, as well as being a little more mindful of the things that you put in your mouths, the food that you eat, maybe the energy, maybe you're not feeling so great in the morning, and then you have a cup of coffee and a donut. That's not good fuel. That's not going to fuel a better mentality. That's going to further fuel being tired and stressed, and all those other feelings that you're having. And if you're running on caffeine and you're really jolted, it's not going to feel good. It's like that. It's like an up and down feeling. Some people can operate on it, but I highly recommend finding a better fuel source to get you there. As well as a well-rounded night of sleep. Because if you have a bad night of sleep, you're gonna start your day waking up not feeling the best and really thinking about your life. Like, wow, I don't want to show up today. I want to go back to sleep and call out. Which,
excuse me.
I think that's a big one. So it's a lot. There's a lot in there. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and maybe you're like, damn, Drew, I would have rather had a chart of some sort, but I think you're just going off on a tangent. No, this is important. Now, you know the old saying, misery loves company, right? Well, success loves awesome people too. How about that? Misery loves company, but success loves awesome people. So you can choose the group you want to be around.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with better people. Because if you're not feeling the greatest and everybody is coming out of their habitats not feeling the greatest, and you guys come together and create this club of bad energy, you're only going to feed on each other and create bad things, bad thoughts, and it's going to travel into the way that you work, the way that you operate, the things that you're going through. You guys are going to feed on each other throughout the day, and it's never going to end. And believe it or not, I have met more of this at my work environment, where you spend most of your time. It's not really at home. It's most of your time is during the day at work, 8 hours a day, 8.5 hours a day. If you're around John at so-and-so department and you guys talk all the time, or Lois in accounting, and you just happen to just feed each other this fuel and talk about all these things, you're really not going to get anywhere besides loathing what you do, not finding a solution or better one. You're just going to really just, it's like a plant that you just keep watering, it keeps growing. And over time, you're going to lose yourself in that environment. The key,
and that plant will grow wilted.
Yeah, it's like a weed. Forget about a plant. Mm-hmm. It's a weed. And before you know it, you don't even realize you're living in it so often. And when you're stressed, guess what? It's going to make you even more stressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. It's not good at all, guys. No good.
You don't say.
So, and I've been guilty of it myself. When I'm not feeling it, mm-hmm. I'm also finding people that want to feel bad too. And it's just, I look back at that and I'm like, damn, I fell for that trap a couple of times. It's easy when you're mad or upset to find other people to be mad and upset with. And then you could just like, screw this place, screw this. I don't want to do these reports. Reports are dumb. No. Moving on. Okay. So we got the people in our lives that we need to help us grow, and our health fanatics, the people that eat better, the people that want to grow. Now, the most important person in your life that is going to help this plant grow instead of a weed is yourself. And it comes with practicing better self-talk.
Love that.
Talk to yourself in a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Because if everybody does this, when you come to work or you come to wherever you're gathering, you're all going to say nice things to each other, encouraging things. Because when you're feeling good and enlightened, it's crazy how all of a sudden you want to share that with other people. Mm-hmm. And when somebody else is not in that frame of mind, they're going to kind of stay away. And the ones that want to hear are going to come around. So it's also like a repellent. It's like a bad talk repellent. It's like, I'm positive. I'm feeling better. I'm doing good. And I want to help you. And that other person might be like, no, stay away from me. I don't want to think that way right now. I want to stay in my little cocoon.
Or you might actually influence them to change. I know there's certainly times where I've brought in good energy to my office, and maybe one of the admin members isn't having the best day, but because they know how I am, I greet them good morning. I tell them how awesome they are. You know, whether I'm going through things or not in my personal life, you know, I've worked on this aspect of myself. So, you know, I know that there are times where you can influence somebody. And if they're not ready, if they don't want to hear it, and for as harsh as this may be, that's more of a them problem than a you problem.
Correct. I mean, listen, you might. I'm not saying that all the time that people will just stay away from you, but when people are ready to receive something good, or maybe they just want to see something differently. I've been in a bad mood and somebody said something that really changed my day. And it's sometimes it's the simplest things. But I also want you to be kind and gentle to yourselves, encouraging. Just be gentle. There's don't bash yourself if your frame of mind is not there, because you're going to go through that. There's going to be plenty of times where you're just not ready to hear it. And that's okay.
For sure.
Sometimes you need to set aside space, go through it, collect yourself, and then reintroduce it at some point. But you got to be kind to yourself. But it's got to come within first before it goes outward. If you're not feeling good, but you're spreading positivity, it's not going to feel genuine. You're going to feel more like a robot just delivering news.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're moving on to a really cool part where Daniela and I are going to have one bad way of talking about something and a good way of talking about something. Daniela?
You want me to do the bad way?
Yeah, I mean...
or negative way?
Yeah, let's do that one first.
Let's go. Okay.
All right.
That makes sense.
Give me one.
So, say, for example, I'm in a situation where I have to do something I've never done before, and I'm scared. My thought process, my negative thinking is that exact thought. I've never done this before. I don't know what to do.
Very dismissive. Like, I've never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the better thought to have is, okay, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn something new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you fail or not, there's always a teaching moment where you can, wow, that's something new I could use. Learning something new.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about another one?
Another one is something has been placed in front of me that I don't really understand, and again, I'm afraid that I'm going to fail. So my go-to is, this is too complicated. I just can't deal with it. I feel that way about student loans.
Yeah, and you're like, I'll go get my money tree.
Yeah.
I'll tackle it from a different angle. Very important.
Yes. It's interesting you say that, because that's actually exactly what I did. I just decided to tackle it from a different angle. Instead of allowing myself to get so overwhelmed because it's so much information, the approach that I took was, let me go to the frequently asked questions and see if other people have asked what I've asked. And I actually got a lot of information from there.
Yeah. Sometimes people are like, oh, it's impossible. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the angle they're seeing. And then there's always somebody else that has a different angle, like a different perspective. Yeah. Sometimes you just need to bounce the idea off of somebody else. Yeah. And maybe that new angle, that new idea will become your idea. And you use that.
Exactly. I would even say that in saying it's too complicated, the type of cognitive distortion that is blaming. You're blaming it on the fact that something's too complicated. Even the previous one where I've never done this before. Okay. That's you blaming it on the fact that you've never done it before. It is important to recognize what type of negative thinking you're having.
It's also, I think, part of procrastination too. Sometimes it's just
true.
Something I really don't want to do. Like, I don't want to pay my student loans. It sucks, right? I don't want to give them my money. And it's going to be it's a lot of money, but fast forward, time flies. And if you're already putting your money towards it, it'll be paid down. Something I struggle with. Yes. Don't get it mixed up here.
We have to say that, not often, but I do feel it's important that we both disclose that throughout us speaking, because it's easier for us to say these things on this end, but that doesn't mean that we don't experience these struggles. It's part of the reason how we got to this point of being able to share it with other people. So, last one.
Yeah, we have time for one more.
Yeah. Excuse me. Which actually kind of goes with procrastination. I have a task to do, or I needed to get something done, and I just wasn't able to. And when I think about doing it, my thought is, you know what? I'm just not feeling this. I'm feeling pretty lazy, and I'm too lazy to get this done right now. It's easier to just go on my phone.
Yes. So what you could do instead is say, I couldn't fit it into my schedule, but I can re-examine it. I could re-examine some priorities that I have and try to fit it in.
Yeah. Right. Reframing is one of those things that's pretty challenging to do, but once you make it a habit, it starts to flow easier. And we do it without realizing sometimes, but when we make a conscious effort, it feels more empowering and more rewarding.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, I hope it's okay that I start to wrap this up, because they've been listening to us ramble for 30 something minutes now. But we do hope that the information was and will continue to be valuable. If even there's just one little thing that you've taken away, then Drew and I will feel really awesome. And I will actually, prior to this, like this recording, we obviously talked about, how we were going to break it down. And I'm going to steal what you said to me, because I don't think you remember saying this to me. And I'm sure you've heard it somewhere. But if there's one thing that I would want our listeners to take away from this particular episode, beside like all of the information that we've just overflown at you? Overflown? Or I don't know. But in any case, the one thing that I would like for our listeners to take away is that your thoughts can kill you, but your thoughts can also heal you. And I know when you and I were talking about it, you actually said this to me because I have it written down. And I think that's a good way to bring our episode to an end. You know, we've threw a lot out there, but the main thing to consider is, what do your thoughts look like? Because ultimately they can either hurt you, kill you, or heal you and save you. And I love that. I honestly love when you said it. That's why I wrote it down. So I'll let you close it up.
Yeah. So within closing, I want you to understand that this is a journey. It never really truly ends. It's a development process, and you're going to grow along the way, and you're going to look back at who you used to be and who you are becoming. And I think that's the key. Mm-hmm. And if we can help one person in this audience, we've done this. We've done a great service.
For sure.
In closing, we appreciate you all for listening, and we thank you very much.